Welcome back. You're watching Statistically Speaking. My name is Vineet Malhotra, and of course, the NewsX Budget Survey, powered by Statistically Speaking, is what we're going to talk about. With less than a week left to Budget 2025, we have conducted a survey to garner the Janta's views on some pertinent questions, from income tax to corruption and India's outlook on the economy in 2025. Let's take a look at the results that we have got, and of course then we will jump to our guests to get their analysis and assessment and what they think of our survey and how the budget is likely to turn out. It's an important one. It is the first budget for Modi 3.0. And what can be expected from the iPad that the finance minister is going to be carrying on the 1st of Feb? And the first question that of course we asked was, are you happy with the state of the economy? Well, a whopping 53% of the people said yes, they're happy with the state of the economy, but a whopping 39% of the people also said that they are not happy with the economy. 39% is a lot. It is not a small number. 8% of the people perhaps not accounted for. They are not sure, which way the economy is going. But so far, the division, or rather the difference between those who are happy and those who are not, is not that high. The next question, of course, we went on to ask was, should the government cut income tax even further? A whopping 70% of the people said yes. A huge yes to that, and 26% of the people, I don't know why they said that, tax breaks are always important and welcome, said that they do not want the government to cut income tax. But 70% of the people who in fact were a part of the survey said that yes, income tax can in fact use some sort of a reduction in the future. Next on, we also in fact wanted to assess from this survey, do you think corruption in India has gone down in the last 10 years? Well, in fact, the House was divided on this. 50% of the people said yes, 47% of the people said no, corruption still persists. In fact, when Prime Minister Modi came to power, he took a pledge that corruption will be the number one issue, or rather the concern that he will be targeting. But apparently, corruption has not gone down, and perhaps corruption at certain levels, at a very high level, may have reduced, but when it comes to day-to-day corruption, when it comes to challans or jumping a red light, or in fact, not depositing your GST, that kind of a corruption still exists in the system, and that is what exactly this question is also alluding to. Moving on, we also in fact wanted to understand from our viewers, what is the status of your family income? 34% of the people said that it has increased in the last 5 years, which is very good. 36% of the people said, which is of course a majority here, that said that it's remained the same in the last 5 years, which is of course is dismal. What this also means, viewers, that if you account inflation into that same income, they are making a lot less. And we don't know if these people, if they are making more than what they earned 5 years ago, have they accounted for inflation? 30% of the people also said that their income has decreased in the last 5 years. Of course, these are not good trends. These are macro concerns that the finance minister needs to look into. Next up in the survey was the question, what is your economic outlook for 2025? All right, 48% of the people, regardless of the previous slide, went on to say that they are positive that the economy and its trajectory is headed upwards. 31% of the people said, well, no, it's all right, it's neutral, we really can't say anything. 21% of the people also said that it's negative. They do not expect the economy to do any better. These are large concerns. These are concerns which can only be satiated by a philosophy, or rather an outlook, which will make sure that inclusive growth of the economy is important. Dr. Ajay Dua, former Commerce Secretary, with us on the broadcast. Dr. Sharad Kohli, Senior Economist, also with us on the show. Mitali Nikore, Senior Economist, joining us on the platform as well. Thank you everyone for being a part of this. Dr. Kohli, first up, a very simple question for you. What did you make of this survey? Does this give you some sort of a profound insight into what the people of India want if they're not happy with the economy, or if the income has not gone up, or even, income not going up and income decreasing to me are the same thing today? Do you think that is a worrying trend, and what would you attribute the reasons for this kind of an issue?
Well, good evening, Vineet, and good evening to my fellow panelists and NewsX viewers. Yes, incomes have gone up. There is no doubt about that. But the effect has been neutralized by inflation. So that's where I come from. As far as my analysis, it has gone up, but inflation has taken away the benefit of income increase. So sometimes the increase in inflation has not been able to, or shall I say, the income increase has not been able to match the inflation. So inflation has beaten the income increase many a time, which is why your survey says what it says. As far as income tax is concerned, Vineet, 70% of the people absolutely agreed that it should go down. And I think I like to join that 70% gang. I don't know who were those 26% who said, no, income tax rates are fine. Maybe, who you surveyed must have been coming from a very, very rich class where it doesn't really matter whether I'm paying a tax of 5 lakhs or 10 lakhs or 20 lakhs or whatever. Maybe they are those people. But this percentage should have been much more. There's no doubt about that. But there is no question about the fact, Vineet, that we need to put money in the pockets of people. We are a consumption-driven economy. 60% of our economy runs on consumption. Me and you, when we go and buy goods and services, the economy runs. This engine has to fire. There is no doubt about that. So whatever be the changes or expectations from the budget, I remember the novel written by Charles Dickens, The Great Expectations. And, I'm not going to open the novel here, but what I definitely know is that this is a must step which should be taken in the budget this time, whether it is by way of income tax, giving relief to those 2 crore people, a very small number, by the way, people who actually pay income tax. The total number of return filers may be 8 to 10 crores, but people who actually pay income tax are very, very limited. So giving them relief, yes. But what about rest of the middle class? Their count is about 50 to 60 crores by my count as an economist. Those people need badly a relief from inflation. And the best way to tackle that would be, first of all, GST doesn't come under budget. So we can't expect, a GST rate to come down. That is a GST council. Although finance minister being the chairperson of the GST council, obviously initiate a dialogue in that. Hoarding in food items has to be curtailed. The supply chain in food item has to be curtailed. A 10 rupee kilo potato being sold by the farmer reaches our hand at 40, 50 rupees. There are some people who make money in between. We need to cut down this chain. So, your thali has to become cheaper. We are a country where 90% people do not earn more than 25,000 rupees a month. We need to make sure that inflation doesn't hit this massive class of people. So I think that is a must. And that's what I would like to listen to. Rest of the survey, I pretty much agree, Vineet. It seems to be accurate. Little bit here and there, obviously depends on the kind of sample taken by the surveyors, Vineet.
All right. Okay. Valid points, Dr. Kohli. This survey is obviously an eye-opener at, a number of fronts. Mr. Dua, I hope you can hear me, sir.
Yes, I can.
Well, it's appreciated that, people do not want, more taxes. They do not want more taxes, and they obviously want the bracket of their income to be non-taxable. But at the same time, let us not forget that only 22 million people out of 1.4 billion people in our country pay taxes that actually contribute towards national growth. It's a hard pill to swallow, but it's the one that the government has to do. They have a tough job at hand.
Sure. Vineet, what I would like to say is that the survey and the questions which have been asked, they are all highly pertinent, anticipating what might happen in the budget, what needs to happen in the budget, and what's the current state of the economy. For once, the situation on the ground seems to have changed, as well as in the views of the people, I would say. This wasn't the kind of a climate which existed, I would say, even 6 months ago or 4 months ago. But ever since we had the second quarter results come out, the GDP, when it showed that the growth had decelerated to 5.4%, and the first half GDP might be just about 6.2 or so, way behind what was expected and way behind what has been projected for the whole year, between 7.5 to 8. But it is not merely, I would say, one quarter result or one half result which has made people become despondent, as your survey shows. I think things had been happening for a while. People probably, the news channels did not conduct such surveys or did not ask such questions. Now that the trend has picked up, and I would say that all that has come out of the outcome of the NewsX survey seems to be fairly in the direction of what is happening in the ground. Having said that, your question about why only 70% of the people want a tax rate reduction or the incidence of tax as a whole coming down and not the other 30%, I would say, as has been pointed out by Sharad already, that probably it depends upon what's the universe of the survey. If you have included people who are not taxpayers, to them it doesn't make a difference to say that there is no need for it. If there are people way above, though I would slightly differ from what Sharad mentioned, even the rich in the country, the ultra rich, nobody wants to pay taxes. So I would not say that these guys are saying it doesn't make a difference, hence they are not agreeing with reduction. Everybody wants a reduction. But that, again, moving on the whole, I would say that the survey is capturing the mood of the people. Sometimes there is a herd mentality that a few people might be affected, but because it's being said now, openly voiced in the media as well as otherwise, so many more join than even those who have not been affected. That's what they say is a sort of a herd mentality. But certainly I would stop by saying that the government is getting feedback, feedback which is not necessarily positive, as had been happening over the years, as were happening even earlier in the years. So the government should make sure that not only does the second half of the year have higher than the 6.2% GDP, but now we are in the fourth quarter, and the third quarter results are actually due on the 30th of January itself. The estimates of the previous year or previous quarter, but the government in the budget will have to definitely address the issue of consumption, because to my mind, subdued consumption is causing a whole lot of issues in the economy, including subdued investment by the private sector. Government can do only up to a point. You can lead in the process of capital formation, can't do everything. And we are finding that without adequate consumption, without it, the private sector is holding back, despite having the means at its command to be able to invest.
Mithali, your analysis of this survey. Let's also, in fact, put this out that only 4 to 5% of India's population pays taxes. But the good news is that there has been a migration of a lot of people who would perhaps pay taxes on a lower income are now paying taxes on a higher income. So disposable income has increased, maybe not necessarily in tune or in pace with the total number of people who pay taxes, but the quantum has definitely increased.
So, hi Vineet, thanks a lot for including me in this discussion, and really great analysis by both my co-panelists. So I'll start off with saying that clearly the picture is not rosy, and I think for a long time when we are on the ground, and my company Nicor Associates, we've been talking to especially women in clusters across tier 3, tier 4, tier 5, tier 6 locations. And from there, we've been gathering data for the last 5 years And in fact, when we look at the trends pre and post COVID, and I want to bring COVID into this discussion because it was one of those, turning points in every economy, including India's, where, the income inequality started increasing. And we started to see this, when we were speaking to the women, because it's the women who manage the households, who it's the women who manage the household budgets and make every rupee go as far as it can go. So, when we've been speaking to them, we realize that there are certain schemes which have really helped. There are schemes which have helped, for example, the PM Ujjwala Yojana and the PM, Awas Yojana. These have helped women in, taking their households budget forward. But at the same time, the cost of living crisis is hitting the households. And the other thing which I want to point out, which I think we haven't yet spoken about, is unemployment amongst the youth. It's not only unemployment amongst the older people, but unemployment amongst the youth and those who are graduating from, say, even MBA institutes, graduating from engineering colleges, the kind of salaries that they used to be commanding and what they command today is vastly different, because there's a huge demand for their talent. There's no doubt about it. But the skill gap is increasing. What companies are looking for, that's not reflected in the curriculums. So the companies have to spend a lot of time training this youth. So there are a lot of trends that are, that are now starting to be seen.
But I also want to understand from you, what do you make the impact of all these political parties getting into the reverie culture is on the economy? Obviously, that is coming out of somebody's pocket. That is a burden to the exchequer. What do you look at that? In fact, I'll ask Mr. Dua the same question as well. Isn't that against economic growth?
Completely agree with you, Vineet. I mean, this is the reason why 70 to 80%, and I think that if you had, in fact, shown us the data by gender, you would have seen that an even higher number of women would have said, we don't want handouts. I've surveyed women who are beneficiaries of the cash transfer scheme, who are beneficiaries of free transport schemes, saying we don't want these schemes. We would rather have better jobs, have equal pay, have better wages, have more, access to skill training opportunities, and be able to earn for ourselves rather than have these free handouts which make people, angry with us and which make people resentful of us. So honestly, this culture of freebies really needs to end. We need to invest in infrastructure. We need to invest in creating the building blocks of the economy, better logistics, renewable energy, sustainable development. These are the things which are going to take us forward, and not freebies.
Let me take this question to Mr. Dua as well. So how do you feel about freebies and the impact that it's going to have on the economy?
I am of the opinion that anything given below cost, that's how I would describe freebies as, cannot necessarily be said to be bad. Because we have to look at the freebies in the context of the fact that we do not have a social service network in the country, so not social security network in the country of any worthwhile size to be there. So if some sort of freebies are helping people keep their life, body and soul together, I would find fault with it. Where I would find fault with it, because the keeping people alive is our duty of the state, constitutionally as well as morally. So having said that, if certain freebies, like say for instance, giving ration supplies during the COVID, even to middle class income, because it was necessary as a state to be able to ensure that if they are out of job, if there is a shortage of production supply, that at least they remain above water. Their head remains above water. But freebies as they have come about post-COVID, I think I would totally agree with what's...
Okay, all right. So we have a paucity of time. Let me quickly get a response from Dr. Kohli as well on what he thinks about freebies and economic growth. Dr. Kohli, 30 seconds, sir. We have a paucity of time.
Totally. It's bad economics. There's no doubt about that. You are destroying the future of the next generation by freebies. You're also educating the voters that lose your long-term benefit for the sake of a short-term, very small benefit. So a big benefit gone for the sake of a small benefit. I think the voters, the electorate needs to educate itself that you're killing the future of the generations to come by freebies. Apart from bleeding, today Punjab has more than 50% GDP to debt ratio. Look at this skewed. Your FRBM, Fiscal Responsibility Budget Management Act, says it should not be more than between 20 to 25%. I think the states, for the sake of power, they are distributing these freebies. They are not only bleeding the states, you are spoiling the balance sheets, but you're also putting at risk the future of your own generations, Vineet.
Absolutely. Appreciate everybody who joined us. A very fruitful and incisive